I mean, there's one other thing I could do with you right now if you wanted to just kind of get an idea of how to use the MLS a little bit. Would that be helpful?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Let me, there it is. All right, so here's the MLS. When you log in, it's usually going to be, it's usually just going to take you to this page. But the nice thing is, like if I'm like, hey, I need you to look up something on a property for me, all you have to do is start filling it in, and it'll usually, it'll usually come up with the property here. A lot of what I ended up using my last VA for was like with CMA. So over here, sorry, might be going fast. So whether you're here on a search or in the beginning, there's a drop down menu here that you can click on, and this thing called CMA. Well, you probably have some idea. You've probably done that some for maybe one of your agents you work for, but that's a comparative market analysis. So it's got a whole thing where you can click in there and say on this one, we'd be adding a new one. I need the address though. Let me see what the address of this guy's property is. There it is. Okay. So I need to create a CMA for a property called property that I sold a guy. So yeah, this one's single family. I'll tell you when it's not. Some of this has the look of this has changed a little bit from some of the instructional businesses that I've made. Or sorry, instructional videos or whatever. Sometimes I have PDFs and things like that. So usually I'll just write in comments like my thoughts about what his house is worth, but I don't even know that yet. So usually I'll just come back to that. So he lives at 459 on Oakwood Drive. A lot of times they'll let you auto populate from existing listing. Where you can, I guess you'd hit Chattanooga. We're in Chattanooga. These two areas, I'll never have you doing anything in these two little areas, which is Knoxville or Tennessee, Virginia region. So that's kind of a new thing they just started. I don't have the listing number though. I wonder if there's a way I can save this and come. Ooh, you know what? I'll look it up over here. This one over there. 451901. So usually before I even have you do all this, I'll have you look for any old listing for the property. And I typically just have you send me a PDF of the old listing. And I'll have you go into tax records, which I'll show you in a minute. That gives you some basic info. But from the right here, what it says, this is asking for a listing number. So that's the same as they call it the MLS number. And it just goes ahead and pulls up some of the basic, like an old photo from where it was listed in the past. It goes ahead and fills in a bunch of this information so you don't have to do it now. It makes it a little bit easier. If well, anyway, you wouldn't know that, but yeah, if this house used to be purple and now it's not, then that would be one where we'd want to not use the old photograph. Uh, but for these purposes, it should work. So what I did is I hit next. It's asking about comps, and I'm always going to have you go over here where it says find comps, and I will usually give you some sort of parameters upon where to look because you want to find stuff that's in the same general area. So on this
Yes.
one, I would have you go look at 37 at the zip code. And that doesn't work in every area. But that would work in this area. And then trying to think what else there was about this property. Didn't it say it was a 3-2? 3-2, 1,800 square feet. But what I'm most interested in is what's right now, what's sold. If you press pending and contingent, that's what I'm most interested in when pricing a house. And I'm sorry if some of this is low level because you've done it before for other agents. But I did find when I defined it a little more for the last guy I was working with, it seemed to make everything get a lot better. So with smaller square footage, so this home's about 1,800 square feet. We want to stay within a few hundred square feet of that either way. So 16, I'm gonna go up to like maybe 1,900 square feet. If there are a gazillion of them that come up, then it may be that we need to, make that smaller as the house gets bigger. So say if it's like a 5,000 square foot home, sometimes you can do 4,000, 600 or 700 square feet to 5,400 square feet, something like that. But when they're smaller, then you want it to be a little less. So here, I may even make that 17 to 1,900. So yeah, that would probably work for this. Then we just go to details. It just shows you where on a map all these properties are. But and you can look through here. Man, they have a gazillion of them. But one thing you know about this property, it's not on a lake, so it's not brand new. So we're not going to use any of those. But we could look at some of these and see. And I'll typically tell you how updated or not updated it is. And you'll be able to kind of guess that to a point. But what I don't want you to do is just to look it up, click this, add all the listings. That just creates more work for me. If you were to like take all 50 of these and stick them on there, even though some of these are absolute dumps, that I really don't want. That or if this one's built in the 40s and then, I don't want a bunch of brand new construction. That just doesn't compare. None of this stuff compares. Um,
How old usually do you prefer the buildings would be?
what do you mean?
Like you mentioned, you don't want brand new, so um to lessen that one, what year do you usually want
Well,
um
let me put it this way.
maximum?
So this one, when we did that first page, we're entering the general information. It
Mm-hmm.
asked for the year build, and the thing's a 1940s build. So I don't know if you can see that at all. So it's
Yes.
not brand new construction like these guys are down here. Basically, meaning we don't want any of that. In fact, one thing you can do in your search, if you want, you go to edit search. You can actually go to new construction, or maybe you can even limit. You can limit year built. There's a whole lot of stuff you could do. So I mean, you could do like 1920 to. There isn't a lot that's as old as this one.
Oh, you want older buildings because they have higher values, is that right?
No, I want them. So a brand new home is going to be worth a lot more
Oh,
than
Yes.
a really old home. So
Oh.
that's the difference. With this one, we're trying to compare apples to apples. So unless this house is if this house is 5 years old, sure I'm gonna compare it to some pretty newer stuff. But since this house is as old as it is, then we kind of need to not compare it to the brand new stuff. There's another way on here that you can put types of construction, so how about this? You have new, never occupied. It says or, but instead of or, you can change it to not. So not new construction. That would take out new construction, or you can limit the dates, either one. So there are a couple different ways you can spin that. But now that makes the list a little more manageable. I'll usually give you some idea how like this one I think is probably it looks all overgrown. It's probably a total dump. It may even be. It looks like an abandoned house, so it's not gonna compare. The one we're comparing it to, this one, the house that we're trying to find the value for, it has like a couple acres of land. So I don't know that any of these are truly going to compare. So I may have picked an extremely hard one to try and teach you how to evaluate it. But if I tell you it's a well remodeled house, like see how this one's pretty well done. This one's looks like they put in a new kitchen and new flooring and new windows. Then it's going to compare to that. It's not going to compare to the one that looks like an abandoned foreclosure or something like that. So you can kind of look through the photos a little bit, and that'll save me some time so that you aren't just throwing up absolute dumps compared to that. So these are all about 1,800 square feet. So that's good. Well, it's about, those are the ones that are going to compare the most. But I typically do look at the interiors also. Like this one's completely remodeled. So the house that we're comparing, that we're trying to price, I think everything was pretty new except for the windows, and they've now replaced the windows. Oh, there are like a million of these things in here. On the lower price properties are going to be the ones that have the most to compare it to. But you see how this one's a split level? This is kind of a cheaper build. This one, so I think it's probably going to be worth more than that. Your kitchens and baths are a big tell. So this one's actually not. I don't know why this one sold for this much money because it's not that nice inside. Yeah, the lag is pretty bad when we're doing it this way. So that one's updated. This one is looking pretty updated. Wonder why this got so much more money than the other one did. Yeah, this one pretty updated. Show me kitchen. So yeah, people are looking mostly how updated the kitchens and the baths are. So the strike against this one is all this ugly wallpaper and the golden knobs. But this bathroom looks like it's been remodeled. And this kitchen looks pretty 1980s also. This one's in a little bit better of an area, so I think that's probably why it got what it got. So this one's on the lake. That's going to be worth a whole lot more. This one, I don't know what. It looks like it's on a whole bunch of land. I bet you that's why. Yeah, that one's on 50 acres. So those two don't apply. You can set how large, how many acres and things like that a property has. So typically, whoops. Yeah, don't check that button because that kind of checks everything and leaves me sorting through a million listings. But so if I have you do one of these, I'm typically just going to have you just kind of do again, it'll be kind of a draft where you're sticking it in there. I think Lake Haven's a little bit better of an area. Where you're going to stick a bunch of comparables in there and I'll give you the main thing, like as far as area or whatever you need to compare it to. I wonder why that one's so cheap if it's 1,800 square feet. Oh, because it's outdated. All right. So when you get done, you just hit return listings to CMA. This is something I need to do anyway. So it's kind of helping me. Usually I'm going to hope not to have this many because this is a lot to compare it to. But the thing that's nice that this report does, if you just keep hitting next, I'm not going to have you do adjustments. I don't even do all that stuff. I don't even really use this page, but it'll still be part of it. The thing that it does that's nice is it'll kind of average out, help you figure out what the average is, average price, and helps me figure out what the average kind of price per square foot is in all. That helps me price it when I'm live with somebody. So usually I'm just gonna have you do all this and I'll go back in and change the change this or say this is important to know. Say we go back in and I'm like, because there may be times where you send me stuff and I'm like, no, I need you to remove, these 5 houses. So you would go back in to this save CMA, you remove them, you keep hitting next till you get to this page, and then you're going to click recalculate because that's going to change what these numbers look like. So we've kind of got all this done, and you always want to save it. Just save it under the property's name. In this case, I sold this house to them a few years ago, so you may have to go in and put something like, well, what's the date? But 8/22 for August. Oh, y'all do it the other way around, but whatever. That's how oh, and something else I want to tell you. So if you're writing emails to people, we don't typically in the States put good day and then write everything else out that you write. And I noticed that's something. Is that a Filipino thing to do?
Yes, like
Yeah.
it's more of a polite greeting at first.
Yeah. So if I'm like, hey, can you email this agent and tell them this or something like that, in your email, don't write good day and then your message because then it just sort of sounds like you're not from.
Sales.
It just sounds like you're not from here, and they're like, "Who the heck is this person?" So just letting you know that. All
So
right.
what do you write? You just say
I usually just put dear whatever the person's name is, and then put your
Direct to the
message
point.
in there. Um, so like we're gonna save this one, and I'll probably have to look at it with him with his house. Um, this one's gonna be super hard for me to figure out because he's got 2 acres of land and none of those have any of that property. So I'm not even sure how I'm gonna do it yet. But this sort of gives you a little introduction. So a lot of times if somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I want you to," or I would like to list my house, that's gonna be one thing I'm gonna have you do is well, one that I told you at the beginning, I'm gonna have you look up the address, see if there is an old listing. And what that old list, oh, let me back. Yeah, so I have you print out the old listing. Um, when you're looking for the value of a property. So if I'm like, hey, here's the property, I need to figure out what it's worth. I you never put price ranges in there. You don't mess with the price range part. All you mess with is the other criteria like the size and the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. That's the kind of stuff you want to change. Um, if I'm like, hey, I've got Billy Bob who wants a 3 bedroom, 2 bath home, and his budget is from 300 to 400,000. Those you're gonna do that to send that person those properties, but not when we're trying to figure out what a property's worth. So you're gonna put the property's address in there. There's gonna be a way for you to do it as a PDF, and you can send me the PDF. And I'll typically also want you to go down. If you go down here, it says taxes, CRX tax info. You can click there and you can look up this property. So I serve several different counties, um, like this sitting in Georgia. So I'll tell you if it's anything. It's usually always going to be Hamilton County unless I tell you differently. So what you can do, because sometimes these properties have never been listed. You can just look it up, Oakwood Drive, and boom, there are the tax records. So you're just going to want to do save as a PDF and send that thing to me as a PDF. If you're having a hard time finding a piece of property, sometimes you can look up a property next to it. This is another cool deal. So sometimes I'll be like, hey, I want a plat map of this property. If you go over here right below the picture of the property, it says view larger map. Um, you can kind of zoom in, and I don't know why, but when you go to print or PDF print, it's only gonna it's just gonna print this little section here. So so I might have you do that to get a plat map, or maybe I'm like, hey, if you can't find that exact address, but you know, if you want to look at what was the address of this property? I forget what it is. Say you found 4517 Oakwood, and that's this one. I don't know, or whatever. Say you're looking for if you can't, if one of them isn't coming up, you can always look up a neighboring piece of property, click on it, and it'll give you all the information. You can hit view report down here and get a report on that property. So that's just a helpful little tidbit. Um, you can also go over here and make it look like an aerial, which is really cool. Boom, and it kind of shows you an aerial and his driveway and all that kind of stuff. So if I'm asking you to print up a plat map, you can go over here, hit print, or you can save it as a PDF. It's kind of better if you do a print, one of those print PDF things, and then just send me the PDF of it. So so anyway,